Thank you for tuning in to ACTAI Global's Fireside Chat with Ken Goldman. I'm Amanda Terry, your host for this session, and ACTAI's Chief Curation Officer, who serves as our content curation and community outreach person. Today, I'm very excited to have Ken Goldman, President of Hillspire, join us today. Hillspire is a family office management company of which Ken is responsible for financial and administrative functions, along with real estate, aviation, and maritime activities. Ken was formerly CFO of Yahoo, responsible for their global finance functions, including financial planning and analysis, controllership, tax, treasury, and investor relations since October 2012. Prior to that, he served as SVP, Finance and Administration, and CFO of Fortinet, a provider of unified threat management solutions from September 2007 to 2012. And from August 2000 to 2006, he served as SVP, Finance and Administration, and CFO of Siebel Systems. During his professional career spanning over 40 years, he served as CFO of multiple public and private companies, and as CFO has actually helped take 3 companies public. In addition, his experience includes board director, audit committee chairman, financial advisory roles at more than 40 corporate boards, of which 10 have gone public while he was a board member. He also currently serves on the board of directors of NXP Semiconductor, Trinet, RingCentral, Zuora, GoPro, and the SABS Foundation, in addition to nonprofit boards such as the RFK Human Rights Board and formerly Lucille Packard Children's Hospital Foundation Board. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering from Cornell and an MBA from HBS. So with that very impressive introduction, I'm going to give people just a couple more minutes to join before we get going, then we'll dive right in. So for those of you who don't know what ACTAI Global is, we're a 501c3 and community of athletes, conservationists, technologists, artists, and innovators that bring our collective knowledge, energy, and social capital together in active gatherings. Our community supports projects benefiting environmental conservation and economic empowerment via entrepreneurship. Together, we have brought together a marine conservation area with Mission Blue, supported other conservation organizations such as Ocean Elders, Virgin Unites, the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, the Lonely Whale, and catalyzed gatherings around the world, including the Australia-based West Tech Fest, the Necker Blockchain Summit, and the Extreme Tech Challenge, which many of you on this call have been to at least one of those events. ACTAI was also a partner in the formative stages of the 2030 Vision Project to bring technology and multi-stakeholder partnerships to solve the 17 UN sustainability goals, of which we're very proud. So let's get started. I think we've given people enough time to get settled in. A couple housekeeping notes for this virtual gathering. First of all, it is being recorded, so anything that is in the chat box, people will see who are on the webinar, but it won't be part of the final recording. And also, we would love for all of you to ask questions. We're going to leave plenty of time for Q&A from the audience. So if you're logged in via the Zoom app, you'll see a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you just click that button and submit your questions, I'll put them to Ken live. And if you can add your name and your company or your location, it's kind of fun to read those out as well. Either I'll be reading them or Ken and the other panelists will see them, and he can also answer them directly. If you're having any issues logging into Zoom, you can also join us via a local phone number that was in your registration email. And if that's how you're joining us, please email us questions to fireside@actai.global. So with that, Ken, how and where are you?
Well, yes, I just try to, actually right now I'm in Pebble Beach of all places. I live in the Bay Area, sheltering place like I assume most all of us, wherever we are. I'm getting antsy, as I'm sure most of you are. I'm sort of envious of some of the different states other than California that are opening up faster. So, but it is bright and sunny out here. I admit I did play some golf, of all things. It opened up on Monday, so I did play some golf on Monday, and I'm going to play a little bit tomorrow actually. So it is nice that we slowly engaging, but I think we need to do it a little faster, in my opinion. But that's maybe another subject we can get to later if we have time.
Okay, great. First of all, tell us a little bit about how you got involved with this organization, maybe how you know Bill.
So yeah, so if you don't want to slide. So, you know, interesting enough, Bill likes to recount we did some things on windsurfing, but actually Bill stung me the first time because I tried to hire him way back, and I won't say how many years ago because then I might give away his age, and don't think he wants me to. But I tried to hire him into VLSI Tech, which was my first CFO job, and I think he decided to go to another company called LSI Logic instead, and he's had a phenomenal career since. But we stayed in touch over the years, and then, geez, I don't know, Bill, if it's 20 years or whatever years ago, we had the first, actually it wasn't even Mai Tai or ACTAI. I think it was just a group of 6 or 7 of us got together in my place up at Sugar Cove in Maui, where we started windsurfing as a group, and a group that friends that really had a lot in common, hard-charging entrepreneurs, hard-charging active people. And so we all had a good time there, and as they say, it continues on. And so that's been really quite great. By the way, for those of you might hear my dogs, I have a couple of dogs in the background from time to time. They may make some noise. A couple only points on this chart I wanted to say is, I am very open for folks getting together with me. So my email and LinkedIn are up above on this chart. Also, if you connect with Bill, he knows how to get with me, Bill. And by the way, I don't know if there's a better, he didn't ask me to say this, better entrepreneur with a nose for how to really spot great upcoming companies, work really, really well with CEO entrepreneurs, stay with them, mentor them, and so forth. He has a group, we're all envious of the group of folks he knows from all walks of life. He's his own Renaissance guy, so kudos to Bill. A couple other points here, and I'll talk about kiting later. I like skiing and golf. Also, about 10 years ago, I became an early investor in the Golden State Warriors, and I certainly hope we start playing again soon and opening up, as I said before. But I'll cover some of my career and aspects of it as we go on, and Amanda already covered a little bit already.
Great. Yeah. I mean, I would love to hear a little bit more. I know you have obviously extensive experience as a CFO, and we'll get into a little bit about what you're doing today as well. But maybe you could give us a little bit of background on, what was your previous roles as CFO of multiple companies?
Yeah, as you noted, I'm fortunate to have both an engineering background and a finance background. And what I did is, probably the smartest move I made was deciding, having grown up in the greater Boston area and lived my whole life there, to come out west. I had no possessions. I had a job opportunity at Fairchild, and I just decided, this is back in the 70s when it wasn't so obvious, that the place to go was in the Bay Area. In terms of, I really believe back then, even though Boston was considered to be the hub of technology, that the Bay Area, Silicon Valley was going to be that area. And I actually wanted nice weather. So I just decided to come out here, and it was a great decision. And I always tell people where you live and how you start your career is more important than you might think. So, I think always give a lot of thinking as to where you want to, work. But, I have been in technology, and, when I came out, technology was sort of an afterthought. And, a couple of fun facts. One is today, the 5 largest market cap companies in the S&P are all technology companies. Back then, there was no such thing as FANG. We had the Nifty 50, whatever, but the Nifty 50, most of those were not technology companies. So the world is evolved so dramatically relative to technology and its impact on our life. And if anything, it's accelerating and more impactful and more important today than it was then. But the decision that at least I fortuitously made was to come out to Silicon Valley when it was just being started, and to basically root myself there. The CFO, to answer your question, back, and Bill and I both went to HBS. Basically no one went into CFO. People leaving corporate finance, people leaving the MBA programs, they went into banking, they went into consulting, they went into some big industrial companies like Ford, GM, GE, whatever, Xerox. And I foresaw that corporate finance was a great area to go in. It blended my skills in technology and have an aptitude for numbers. It's it's become a very important function. It wasn't considered nearly as important then. If you look at the top 5, highest ranked people in a company, it's always in top 5, if not number 2, 3. There's a lot of things you can see in this chart which you do, but I would say that things that I've always thought long and hard is to be a good sounding board to CEO, and how I would think about, being in her or his position, and what I would recommend. I think it's really important. I like systems and so implementing systems and procedures is really important. I mentioned accounting is really important, in a number of things. So it's a great role, and again, for the different folks and maybe people listening on this after on a tape recording, whatever, you come back to it. But I can't, and now basically you also have people that went into banking becoming CFOs, because it has become, a very, I don't say reputable, but just a position that's of a lot of respect and importance that it really didn't have 20, 30, or 40 years ago.
Great. And I know you've, obviously taken many companies public, and I think been part of at least 7 public companies. Can you talk a little bit from the CFO perspective, when you join a company, what are you looking for in the CEO?
Well, I'm looking for the same thing, actually, interesting enough, as a CFO or even as a board member. I'm looking for a company where I can create value, where they appreciate what I do. We can have an impact together. We're aligned culturally in terms of what I believe. And, a couple companies I ended up leaving because I didn't feel we were aligned anymore culturally. So that's an important element to me. I think something I forgot to say earlier. I think if you look back at my career, one of the things I'm most proud of is we've created shareholder value in every single one of them. So investors, have a good respect for what I've done, my teams have done, and we've created value. We've done it honestly and with a lot of integrity. And so that's been really important to me. I put up this chart. I have just a few charts here, and I'm not going to bore you, but there's a few things that I've sort of collected over the years, which I think are important. And this is what I look for in a CEO, and just a few things. I do look for a CEO that, they do, I say cube, triple, whatever. CEOs, they do need to be decisive. The good CEOs, interesting enough, and some of these things would be not obvious, are the ones that know how to say yes, but more importantly, know how to say no, particularly in various projects. They know how to hire a team. I say on the right, they bring along a team. Criticize when I see some CEOs go into companies and they don't have people to follow them. One thing I'm proud of is when I've joined companies, I've been able to hire a number of people that work for me, which makes me feel good about my team. And by the way, I actually forgot, there's probably well over 20, maybe 30 CFOs in the Valley that I hired in terms of a training program that have done very, very well. Many of them probably better than me in some respects. So that's important. CEOs, they have passion. They have significant passion. They have, I don't really make a couple comments. Sometimes I want to make comments different way. They have humility, which is a balance with humility. And I say arrogance, but a better word is swagger. I like having some swagger, but I also like having humility. By the way, before I forget, the thing that is really important, and I tell a lot of folks this, you have to be responsive. I'm going to digress for a second here. I try to get back to people either, on particularly an email, certainly within a few hours, if not the day. A number of people I really respect strongly do that. I can, and people that are way, way busier than me, send a note to Mark Benioff, you'll get a note back within minutes. Doug Leone, Mark Cuban, a number of these people. There are others which I'm not going to name. Frankly, the only time they get back to you, even though they may know you way better, is when they may need something from you. So I think this is just a comment, being responsive. I get back to recruiters, even though, frankly, I'm not looking for a job. When they call me, I want to be respectful. So just take that as something I don't even say later, but I was thinking about before I got on this call. of being very responsive, and the great leaders, the great people are very respectful of others. Couple of things, here is, work on the big items. Communication is important, and by the way, it's one of the things that, as we all do it. I'm running a family office. We have several hundred people in the office. I continue to have staff meetings every other week. We have, with our leadership group, a couple of communication meetings each week. So communication has become even more relevant in today's world. The entrepreneur leaders, and I know, Bill, you can speak of several that you and I just even talked about. Eric Wan at Zoom and so forth, that are just so good at leading a team and leading team by example, being there for the team, just absolutely so important in terms of everything.
Amanda, you're on mute. I don't.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Sorry,
I know. I was wondering. I couldn't see her. I was getting worried that. Thanks. Hey, Bill. Good to see you. So yeah. So but great to see Bill too. But I can't see Amanda right now.
I think you can see me now, right? I think you can hear me.
Great.
Okay, great.
But anyway, that was a little bit about executives, and I think if you look at, I am very pro founders. And if you look at my background, whether it was Siebel Systems, Tom Siebel, Fortinet, Ken Z, you look at, boards I'm on, Ring Central, get Vlad Shumas, GoPro, you got Nick Woodman. One of the things I really have enjoyed is working with founding teams. We had the same thing at other companies, TJ Rogers at Cypress. And so, so I am really passionate about teams. And I have, again, I assume, Amanda, you're going to have these slides for people. And I'm just going to comment on a couple of things that I've learned. This has really my experiences. And think of it, I was fortunate to become a CFO at age 31. What helped me a lot is, getting visibility early. That was a comment I make in Fairchild. The CEO there, we would have monthly meetings, and the CFO of the various divisions got to speak, and I got a lot of visibility there. And one of my division presidents there was the one that referred me into VLSI. And honestly, every job I've gotten but one, and every board I've gotten, every single one in 40, have all come from my own network, not recruiters. So your network is really, really important in being visible and relevant. Memorex gave me the opportunity to manage people, and managing people is something you don't learn at business school. You learn by doing, and frankly, figuring out what works, and sometimes, many times actually, what doesn't work. Cypress was an interesting, most hard-charging. Well, I've actually worked for a whole bunch of hard-charging CEOs, but he certainly was hard-charging, demanding. But I learned there how to create systems specific to how the CEO wants to run the company. And the way we ran Cypress was very different than we run VLSI. And if you go to the next chart, is very different than we would run Sybase, because of, so developing systems and processes for the way your CEO wants to run the company, as opposed to one size fits all, really important. Sybase was the only company I did move. It was important to get out of hardware into software, and I did do that through a recruiting firm. But one of the things that failed us then is we were doing so well. Hubris set in, and hubris is a bad thing. I'd rather have you think about Andy Groves, only the paranoia survive. So just think of always that. And so then I worked at Home. It was my third company that we collectively took public. It was the way I got into the internet. Unfortunately, we acquired a company called Excite, which didn't work, and CEO in particular didn't work out well. That came from Excite, as opposed to CEO I had at Home, which was Tom Drimlock, who was fabulous. Worked with him in a nanosecond again. Siebel was great. Tom was great. Hard to do turnarounds, because after the recession, we became a turnaround, and it was also hard to go from perpetual to SaaS business models. Fortinet, I'm probably one of the things I'm most proud about. It was a company tried to go public, couldn't get there. We had to do a lot of things like get audits done, get the financials, doing better. we sort of coined a term at that point, don't waste recession. Another term is don't waste a crisis. So it's funny how things have a way of every 10 years coming back. This chart's a little oldish. The company now, when I joined, was a few hundred million in market cap. It's now a $20 billion market cap company. A company, by the way, that many folks in the security industry disparaged. They thought the CEO wasn't that good. It's a great company, and I've continued to work with Kenzie in a number of ways, and we'll continue to do that, maybe even more so. Cannot be more proud of what they have done in a company that's sort of off the beaten path, but is probably I think number 2 company now in the security space. And the last company mentioned here is Yahoo. Before I came, Yahoo was a job where I got a cold call from Marissa. She had just joined in July of 12 and called me, Bill, I actually haven't told you this, called me from the beach. I was, in those days, I was windsurfing, Bill, and Maui, my favorite place, and called me off the beach and asked me if I would like to interview for the job. And I said, absolutely, and got a quick plane back, and we, after a couple, 3 months of interviewing with her and the team, came on board. And by the way, interesting enough, I think almost every job change I've made has come from Maui, where I was rethinking what I wanted to do for the next several years, and it was just an opportunity to sit back, relax, and have some fun, but also rethink my career. But I learned there, boards matter. We were never really well aligned with our boards. Several boards we had there, including activists, and I won't join an activist board. It's just not who I am. But it worked out financially for our investors and whatever, and when we sold the operating business. And that's when I ended up, and I'll just say a word or two here. That's when I ended up joining Hillspire. Again, why connections are important. Eric Schmidt, he was on the board of Siebel, and I must admit it's not well known, but I just joined Siebel, and this is before even Eric joined Google. They did an outreach to me Google did an outreach to me whether I might want to interview for the CFO role. This was back in 2001, whatever, and and it says something about me. And of course, who would have known Google would become where it is? But I just joined Siebel, and I didn't feel I felt loyalty to the company, and I couldn't change. And Eric had just joined Google, and hard to figure out how to talk to Eric, and while he was on the board of Siebel, so I didn't end up interviewing for that role. Actually had a long time ago I had a chance to interview for the role of Microsoft CFO also before they went public. So you never know what you miss in life, but it is what it is. But anyway, Eric knew me from being on the board of Siebel, and when he was looking to add a leader to his family office, I joined. Soft started in I guess late 17, but started formally in early 18. And as Amanda says, we have actually 300 people. We have a number of we have foundations. We run various personal properties of the family, real estate, oceanography, Falco, which does oceanography studies, maritime, as Amanda said. So it's actually a lot of fun. It's very important. I don't know if people noticed this morning, but Andrew Cuomo announced a new 15-person commission in New York to reimagine New York, and it's reopening, and put Eric Schmidt to head up that commission, which is great. He will be superb for that role. I would say that the thing that's always helped me is staying relevant in the world, staying very active. I'm a very active investor. I see a lot because I'm an active investor. I tend to go to a lot of conferences when I can. I can't do it now, obviously, but I think staying relevant, learning, and being engaged. Listen a lot. Even today, there's just these weeks that while we're all home, so to speak, there's a lot of COVID-related conferences I attend. I got into this G100 group, which is a group of board members and CEOs, which I joined, so I learned from them. I get invited to a lot of the Big Four accounting audit committee sessions. I get invited to various investment banking board conferences. So I do a lot of these because I'm able to hear best practices, read, share notes. And so it's one of the ways you stay in the game, if you will. I have never had any space. When I leave a job, I start another job. I've never had space. And so that's always how, let me make sure, it's a lot of noise. I'll be right back in 30 seconds. Hey, Sue, I'm Sue, my speaking. So anyway, that's how I've stayed involved.
Great, and we're starting to get some questions streaming in,
Okay.
so I'll kind of jump between some of mine and some of the ones from the audience.
Okay.
One question, just you talked about angel investing. How active are you? How many companies do you usually like to work with at any given time?
Yeah, I probably do 8 to 10 direct investments a year I get involved in, and sometimes those are most times they're passive. From time to time, I mentor and get involved. I'm probably in at least 20, if probably way more than that, venture funds that I'm in. Bill and I got together with Charles River when he used to be there, but that's just one of many that I'm involved in. Investor in a number of private equity firms. So interesting enough, if you look at my boards, all of those started when they were, other than Ring Central, when they were private companies. So they all started when they were private, and other than Ring Central, several of those I was investors in as well. So a lot of times that's how I join, get my relationships.
Great, and you gave a lot of great examples of kind of what you look for in CEOs at different companies. I guess, how would you describe your management style, and how has that evolved over time from hardware to software, and even just generationally from kind of old school Silicon Valley to today's millennials?
Yeah, old school. I'm glad you asked that. The old school, as I came and Bill would know this. Semiconductors was a survival of the fittest. It was who could be the toughest. You could. That was sort of the mantra of being, a tough. And frankly, I'll say it this way: it was sort of at the time it was male dominated. It's obviously changed over the years. Actually, you have a number of female CEOs now in the semi industry. Lisa Su, good example at AMD. But we had the classic folks of the Wilf Corrigans of the world, Charlie Sporks of the world. So there's a number of folks that were very involved. Then that has changed over the years. And my style was more of an embrace. I could be very headstrong, abrasive. Because it was sort of the way I grew up a little bit, and then you realize that really doesn't work in today's world, and you have to sort of have a balance, and you have to figure out how to treat people very differently. There's some people I could push hard, and I used to remember this well, and they sort of would accept that and giddy up. There's others, if you do that, they would really cower. So you have to have different ways of dealing with different people. Which is really, really important in how you think about, your management style and so forth. So I think it's some of the things I think jobs today are much broader than they ever were. And so thinking about, your employees and how to motivate them. And, I think the world you live in, employees, other than right now, have they have a big choice of where they can work. And so being able to mentor and treat people really, really well is extremely important. And I've been fortunate that I've been able to hire really good people. People have enjoyed work with me. I actually had someone, I'll find it maybe later. Someone that worked for me at Yahoo. She actually came in LinkedIn, said, I consider myself to lucky to have worked with you and learned, cash and negotiating and pricing. So there's a lot of people that I've worked with that have been, that I've had a chance to mentor over the years.
Right, and I think just as we were getting onto this call, we were talking about Necker Island and that you have some property there. If you had some advice for your good friend, Sir Richard Branson, on some of the dealings right now going on with Virgin. Anything you would, how to navigate this current environment? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be presumptuous of me to go down that path. I think I would say though, I've enjoyed, I really enjoy going there. I think it's if not the best, certainly one of the best places in the world to just enjoy, get away, have fun with people. It always has a different group of people there, and so we've always enjoyed going there. So it's been tremendous. I think sometimes what you have to do in today's world, a good way of thinking about it is the investors that did well in the 2009-10 had the wherewithal to think long term and get enough cash and have enough cash to stay invested and then move forward. And I think the ability to continue to stay, and I know whether it's very, trouble is right now the industry that's hurting the most is travel and hospitality and leisure. And that's, and I'm really hopeful that we'll see the turnaround of that. I just saw actually a note today where Norwegian, one of the cruise lines, is going to start up operations in August. So I think there'll be more people who want to go get back in gear than people think. Someone else was telling me the other day that some of the cruise lines are booked solid in the fall. Someone else was telling me that the Four Seasons, either in Texas or Miami, one of the places that were just opened, you almost can't get a reservation because they're totally booked. So the places that are opening are getting booked up really fast.
Great, and I'm going to start taking some questions from the audience. I have one from
Okay.
Wayne Ricard, who says, what are some examples of don't waste a crisis that apply today?
I think the number one thing is, and I had this discussion with a couple of folks, is figure out how to go on the offensive. Obviously that's easy to say if you have cash, but we've discussed this in some of the boards I'm on, how to think through. Yes, you need to make sure you have cash. You need to make sure you can get to the other side of the crisis, recession, whatever. But how do you take advantage? Where can you invest and gain share and so forth? And you look at what Zoom is doing as an example, and I'm not directly associated with it, but you just look at how they are now becoming a verb as opposed to a company. So I think you'll find that the companies, the other thing is, if you look at when many of the great companies today were created, they were created 10 years ago. Why? That happened to be the last time we had a recession. So the Airbnbs, the Palantirs, the Ubers, the Lyfts, you name it, many of the great companies today that are private still were created during the last recession. So the opportunities to invest, in areas when people don't have as much cash, but in companies, I think the opportunity to go get aggressive and go on offense, not just defense, is important. The other thing I'd say, which I always laugh about, people say cut once and that's all. The reality is cutting is hard, and to know how much to cut is really difficult until you peel the onion and you see. So, I actually always say, it actually a little differently. Do the cuts or the actions you would do even if you weren't, even if you don't know where it's going or how bad it is. In other words, take actions today that you might do so you have a good, for lack of a better way of saying, excuse to take some action now. So use the current opportunity now to do some things that maybe wouldn't have been as palatable in good times, and do those things now, and so you have cover to some extent, if you know what I'm saying. So do those. So maybe even if you're doing well enough, use the opportunity to, maybe reduce expenses in certain areas that you wouldn't have otherwise, so you can reinvest further to be basically more aggressive.
I think this question kind of dovetails on what you were just saying, but James McDonough from Houston was asking, what do sales and marketing focused founders typically not appreciate or need to learn earlier from their CFO?
Well, I think it's interesting. There's one company, probably won't name it, but there's a company where the CEO is much better in the sales and marketing. And what I find is in technology companies, the CEOs really want to spend their time on engineering and sales. they want the administrator to just work. And so they have the administrative functions work well. Many of them, you know, in the finance, they want to get into it when they need to, but they frankly would rather spend the time in engineering sales. So good CFOs make it easy for the CFO to spend their time on engineering sales, and they just want the trains to be running in the finance area. And I think, yeah, and so they get, and by the way, so when if the CFOs leave, they get nervous because it's not an area they have natural, you know, knowledge or instincts on. So it takes them a while, and it's not their comfort factor. So, but I would say good CEOs, even if they're not financially adept, have a good facility for numbers. And so they get the numbers really, really quickly.
And this is a question from Adrian Scott. How do you think about risk, and how has that evolved over the decades? And I think you could look at that either from a company perspective or your own personal career perspective, but I'd be curious how you answer that.
Well, I think in companies, you know, it's funny, we had this discussion. We always, you know, if you look at the SEC filings, you always have a big section on risk factors. And how many of us would have thought of a pandemic being a big risk factor? We would have thought of all the normal things, competition, tariffs, and just a whole bunch of, you know, whether you're losing money or not losing money, cash, and all these things. But who would have thought of a pandemic as being number one risk right now? So I think it's always hard to see the black swans, what's going to happen. And so I think the more you can, I think, you know, let me give an example. And I remember thinking about this at the time on the airlines. You know, by the way, for those that didn't listen, you should always listen to Warren Buffett. You know, I listened for 5 hours on Saturday. I was actually at the beach and I was listening to it. And the guy from 89 years old is just so, you know, eloquent and so thoughtful. And handle Q&A for, I'm doing this for an hour and he did it for 3 hours. Is absolutely amazing to me. But, you know, he was talking about airlines and he got out of all the airline stocks. And I remember thinking at the time when the airlines were doing so well after the recession. And I'm thinking, geez, if I were a CFO there, I would have been raising so much money, so much balance sheet. And what I thought might be a pandemic, no way. But I would have thought, geez, what do we need to do to have the most, you know, bulletproof balance sheet? And so I think, you know, some of these companies, frankly, they forget, and when they have the wherewithal to raise money. And one of the core things I actually should have brought up before of a CFO is always making sure you have the resources to execute the strategy, because if you don't have the resources, you know, strategy, it goes for naught. And so I followed, you know, and I actually said this at the time, it isn't just hindsight, that many companies and many industries should have been not buying back as much stock of any stock, and they should have been fortifying their balance sheets for, you know, a rainy day, because rainy days in cyclical industries always come. Now, we would have thought a recession might have been the next, not a pandemic, but nonetheless, you know. So I think in risk, one of the ways to alleviate risk is having strong cash, because when you have wherewithals to handle your activities, then you have way more degrees of freedom what to do. And so I think, you know, and that's both in terms of your life, your own life, as well as in companies.
Great. And you mentioned the pandemic. I've gotten a couple people wanting questions about this, and one is from Chris Maxwell asking, how would you or are you managing a workforce that is exclusively virtual? Any tips there?
Yeah, you know, it's surprisingly it's going well. You know, for all of us that sort of really enjoy being in the office, you know, we're doing a few things. One is, you know, I do have one-on-one meetings on a pretty regular basis, obviously over Zoom. Two, actually, I'm involved in RingCentral. We use RingCentral too. Two is we have 2 calls a week. Monday, we used to do them 3. We used to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Now we have Monday and Thursday. So you get caught up with the leadership team. So everyone gets to discuss what's on their mind. Now we're talking about, you know, various ways of planning a reopening, and thinking about how to think about that. There's actually a website, I can't remember the name of it, that has great ideas for how to reopen businesses. So thinking about the reopening, thinking about team health, what's on employees' minds and so forth. you know, and it's interesting. One of the things we're discussing today is everyone, you could give people time off, but it doesn't really do them any good because there's nowhere to go. So one of the thoughts we had today is, okay, maybe we don't do that, but you take various teams, the whole team gets a day where they're not on email, whatever. Because if you just do one person, then they still get all these other emails from the rest of their team. So you do maybe a team-based day off with nothing else to get away from their screen all day. But I think the key is communication. We also send out once a week all employee a message so everyone can get caught up on what they're doing, which is really, really important. So I think having, so it's communication, it's understanding, but, interesting enough, we have continued to hire. We have not lost anybody during this period of time. We've continued with all of our employee benefits and so forth. Now we have the benefit. We're not a for-profit, so to speak, entity, but that's how we've managed. But a lot of it's communication, collaboration, and understanding what the key projects are.
Great. And kind of dovetailing on that, we've got from Lisa Andrews from Australia. Is there any type of KPI or way to measure your team happiness when they're working from home?
Just look at the side of the questions. I don't know if there is. It's interesting. We were going to do, we use a tool called Glint for our employee relations. But we decided not to go do that right now because I'm not sure what it would really tell us. I think the best thing now is to have it sort of be open, so people can communicate with you directly. So being able to communicate with you directly, being able to I hear something in the background here, but be able to communicate directly, being able to do the all hands communications, the couple of calls a week to keep up with people. I think those are things that really help. And the more you can do it. I mean, we just had a call today. It was good listening to my team and going through it. And frankly, what helps a lot is that I hardly ever only on teleconferences. It's almost exclusively now on video conferences. So being able to see people is a huge benefit as opposed to just being on a audio conferences, which is up until about a year ago is all we ever did.
Right. Another question from Perth, Australia, from Bonnie Lynn, Rainmakers Global. What is a major, learning experience or what you might consider failure, which I consider growth opportunity, from early in your career that has helped shape decisions now, or how you handle?
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I haven't had a crisis in my own career. It's funny what I was thinking about earlier, where I've decided, I've made a lot of my decisions in July when I'm off, either windsurfing or I'm now kiting, to use those opportunities to really think about my career. I learned to change, at least the roles I've been, when I lose confidence in the company, and the way I've sort of measured that is when I can no longer recruit people into the company, I'll keep people from leaving with a good conscience. And think about what I just said. And so when I decide that I can't, in my own conscience, recruit new people into the company, or I can't, when people are thinking about leaving and I can't try to save them, so to speak, when I lose that confidence, then it's time for me to move on. That's what so when I've left some companies, it's always, that's been the driver for me, generally. Now, sometimes I've left companies when we get sold, and that was the case of Siebel when we sold the company, and Yahoo when we sold it. But other times it's really been when I've all of a sudden lost confidence in the direction of the company, the CEO, and I've decided it's best for me, just to go find another role. And sometimes, by the way, when you're a little bit, unhappy about where things are, just the idea of interviewing for other slots and having people talk to you about it, even if it's not the role you want to do, is very, very helpful.
Right, and this kind of dovetails on that from Jeremy Carr, and he was asking, when you engage with new companies, either at the board level or otherwise, you're president or when you were CFO, what are the things that you're looking out for, both positives and you kind of talked about some of the negatives, but things that you might want to look out for?
Well, when I think, wherever, in the board, the number one thing, frankly, I look at, interesting enough, is who else on the board. I'm not too concerned about diligence. Everyone says do all this diligence. I don't do all of that. You find that great people want to relate to other great people, and they attract. So when I join boards, it's because the boards, I like the people on the board, and I like the culture of what I see, and I believe in the company. Correspondingly, when I leave, and I have left a number of boards over my career, sometimes it gets sold, but other times it's because I don't like the board dynamics. That it's not collegial. It's not collegial does not mean you have to agree, but it does mean you work well together. And therefore, it's not when I don't enjoy going to the board meetings. It's the same with the company. If you don't enjoy being there, and you don't, because you spend a ton of time there, then it's time to go move on. So I think, what I've looked at is when I can be with people that I really respect, I enjoy being with. We have a good dialogue back and forth. We're constructive. We think we're adding value. I don't do anything where I don't think I can add value, because why waste my time or other people's time? So I have joined companies and boards when I think I can be value added, and where there could. And by the way, it doesn't always work up and to the right. I've been other companies I've been involved with. Things are always going right. They seem to be great, and so forth. Other companies where, frankly, I'm on the board of GoPro. It's been challenged, it's all public. But, I believe in the company and the team, and is a great founder, CEO there now, and is supporting him. And so, things don't always go, and, and you get measured, a lot of times, and when things aren't going well, and how do you deal with issues and tough situations. And, and GoPro's had some tough situations. Others, Ring Central's done really, really well. It's a board I joined 3 years ago, and stock is up like 7-8 times since I joined. It's incredible. So, it's a mix. A number of boards I joined when they were private. I joined TriNet when it was a private, company, and GoPro was a private company. NXP was just going public when I joined. Zora was private when I joined. So, I get involved, and and I do like running public companies. I do think I think. For those in the call, I think Bill Gurley said this well. He's one of the venture capitalists that I most respect, and I think he has said it well. Companies should go public when they can. There's too many companies been reticent. Going public creates capital, creates currency, and creates diligence. And so going public is a mark of success, in my opinion. Too many companies have been reluctant to go public, and I think it's tough. And frankly, I look back and I say Airbnb, it'd be a different situation if it got in public and raised a whole ton of money and so forth. And I think there are number of companies that frankly have waited, in my opinion, too long to go public. And so. Yeah, it takes some courage. Again, I think, as I said earlier, I think it's going to take some courage to open up economies, and I'm hoping more and more folks have the courage to open things up and see how it goes. And because it's going to be, it's not going to be for the faint of heart, but that's what a lot of times you get paid for.
I'm curious, obviously you have to make a lot of decisions all the time based off of data. What type of news outlets or what media do you consume to help keep you informed of what's going on in the world?
Well, I try to read a lot. Right now, it's funny, I'm so busy, I'm getting a little ticked off. I'm not reading as much, but I tend to only read business stuff because that's what I enjoy. But by the way, it makes me relax. For some reason, I get relaxed. So I read the Wall Street Journal, which I believe is well written. I try to read Barron's because, again, it's more financially oriented, and I get a sense of, a sense of stories. And actually, interesting enough, even on it's funny, on even all these things, isn't just the keeping up with the news, but they sometimes have good stories of companies and what they do, and they remind me a lot of different things. And so I like reading. The last one I like reading is Economist. Again, I'm behind on a bunch of issues right now, but I think it's well written. And I like the fact that it takes a viewpoint from internationally looking at us. And so I think it's quite good as well. And then I read, I'm old fashioned. I like print. I believe it's easier to read newspapers on print than it is on the iPad. I'll read it on the iPad when I'm away, but I happen to like print versions because I can more easily scan what I want to read. And if you look at an iPad or whatever, you don't sometimes see articles that are giving me sort of, examples of how business works. And I read the local newspaper more just get a quick thumbnail of what's going on, but also because I like sports.
Great. And we had a question earlier about kind of challenge early in your career. I guess I'm curious, like, what are you most proud of, maybe from a personal perspective and a professional perspective?
Well, I think that the two I'd say professionally is when I went to Fortinet, it was a company where a lot of people suggested it was a wrong move. They didn't trust the CEO. And that he potentially had some issues of how he was running the company, whatever. And I went there because an investor I really, John Lesker, who you probably know, if Bill's still listening, he was on the board and he suggested it was a very strong company and to believe it. And I knew he would have my back, so to speak. And I joined in and we cleaned up some things that, from a financial point of view, get audits done and so forth. And again, you look at a company that was basically a non-entity in the security space. When I joined, it was a $100 million company. Now it's a couple $1 billion revenue company, 20 billion market cap company, and I think it's going to be number 2, 3, or is number 2, 3, maybe even number 1 pretty soon in the security issue. And then a story, and yeah, we started as a group in windsurfing, and I enjoyed that, and I did that since early 2000. I was one of the early windsurfers. Even did it when we used to do it at Redwood Shores in the Bay Area. So probably when many of you weren't born. But then, I started to learn in Maui, and it was ticking me off because I go, for those at kiting, I go to Kite Beach, and I get out there, and I do the walk of shame, go down with my instructor, we walk back, and I did this for a lot. You have no idea how many days and hours and months and years I did this. And finally, I think 2 years ago, I said, I'm not going to ever do this again. I'm tired of doing it. And it means if I only go out once and come back, I'm going to figure out how to stay upwind. And I got it. And now I'm staying upwind, I'm turning and all that stuff. And so, it took me forever because I'm not a very good athlete, but I tried to persevere. And the fact that I was able to, now I really enjoy it. Actually, I'm too lazy now to get my windsurfer out of my attic because it's so much easier just to bring the kite gear out and go kiting. So I enjoy now kiting, but I'm not much of an athlete. And so I work hard and I'm very persistent and I don't give up. And it took me, the whole idea is that I'm not going to do that walk of shame anymore. I'm not going to do it. It means I go out once, I come back, I'm going to do it. And lo and behold, once you commit to something, that broke the code.
I can definitely relate to the walk of shame on Kite Beach. I have taken that walk myself when I was learning how to get upwind. So this next question is from Jose Antonio Casanova, who says he's a student and windsurfer from Spain. And he wanted to know, if you to start your life again, what would you study? What advice would you give to a 17-year-old who's just left school? And he also wanted to thank you for sharing your time and hopefully wants to share some windsurfing time with you in the future.
Well, windsurfing, maybe more kiting. No, it's funny. Someone was saying everyone's actually more appreciating biology now. Actually, just the opposite of what the question was. It's biology all of a sudden has become a preeminent subject whenever we go back to school because now people realize how important it is. No, I wouldn't do it any differently. I think if you get a technical degree, it's really important. The engineering, and having to go through problems and go through solutions and learning engineering and not just taking whatever you want to consider to be a soft curriculum, I think is important. Having said that, I think taking a little bit more of the social sciences is helpful because so much of the world is social sciences, and I think a lot of the technology companies are hiring more people from the social sciences because it's becoming more relevant today. And so I wish I could have spent a little bit more time on that aspect as well. But I think there's a lot of people today going through, is education worth it? Is an MBA worth it? I know for me, it was transformative. Both, I learned how to think in engineering and work hard. MBA really taught me that the finance and business and the case study was really, really helpful. So I think there's obviously the Bill Gates of the world and whatever that don't need to go to the school and so forth. But I think for many of us, not, virtual, by the way, I think there's going to be a lot of that, but I think it's hard to replicate the experience you get by mingling with. I can't say I can do business school on a virtual. You lose a lot. And I think even undergrad and just generally school, the ability to interface with other students, the ability to interface with your teachers and ad hoc meetings, so forth, that's hard to duplicate. So I still think there's a lot of value to the going to school on campus as opposed to just doing it on virtual. So I think virtual, in my opinion anyway, should be an adjunct to the in-person as opposed to replacing or in lieu of in-person, in my opinion. And I think where it would really be helpful is continuing education. I wish there was more where I could be on, I could go take, without taking tests, where I could continue to go learn. And I go to a lot of, there's a lot of actually HBS sessions now we're having, which I enjoy from professors or whatever. And so I think to have more, ad hoc learning, continuous learning, I think is one of the areas to really, there's going to be a lot of things where people talk about digital transformation. What can you do? What did we learn during this process that's meaningful going forward, where we just don't do the same things over and over again? We were talking about, yesterday where, even 9/11, I said, it wasn't, people still fly, but yeah, we still have to take our shoes off generally and all these other things. So there's things that continue from these crises that continue on. And I'm sure there'll be a number of lessons learned through this process. I hope it isn't where we need a mask forever and we can't go to big events and so forth. And we learn to basically go back to where we were, but with some ideas of how we can improve too.
Great. I know we're just getting up to the top of the hour, so I want to make sure everyone sees in the chat box. We did post a Zoom room link that Ken will hopefully be able to join us for a little bit on for the ACTAI community. Password is ACTAI, and we'd love to have people join. And it's just kind of an informal chat that will happen once this recording is over. But I also just, kind of in closing, I know we had discussed.
There's a couple of questions. Someone asked what kind of pups I have. A couple of questions. So we have a cockapoo and a white cream retriever. And then someone asked, which, and I feel, but someone says, geez, I'm a manager and I've just been let go, given the world. And, and I would say the good news, so to speak, is there's 30 million of you out there. And so there is no, shame is a bad word, but there's no negative, in my opinion, if you temporarily are without a job right now. There's many folks that are going to be out of work right now because no fault of your own. And so I would say the number one thing is don't waste a crisis. I would say stay involved, stay upbeat. Realize it's going to be probably next couple, at least certainly next month. It's going to be really hard to get a job. So I would not over worry about it and get nervous. I would think about maybe you can take a course, maybe you can study, read a lot, take some time off to enjoy, to do some, physical activities you may not have been able to do. Stay in good shape. But I certainly, I think you just have to realize that it's not the end of the world. You're young. We're in a situation that frankly, for all of us that have been around a long time is literally unprecedented in terms of the speed and scope of this situation, which is no one's fault. I mean, you could argue when we had the last recession, they call it the global financial crisis, GFC, that was different. That was the fault of a lot of people in terms of how they acted, in terms of mortgages or whatever. This is the fault of no one. And so you just have to sort of think through that, we will get over it.
Right, and I think you had we talked earlier about some kind of great rules of the road for careers. So maybe we could close on that if we could cue up some of those slides.
Yeah, let me just, I know we're out of time, but I'll just
Yeah.
go through a few of them. You know, number one, you know, I put a number, could be number 1 through number 10 is integrity. You know, people say companies have you have to have a strategy, and I think you orchestrate your career and think of the strategy. And I thought about that. I thought about, you know, how I started, you know, a financial analyst and got controllership experience, got what do you call it, managerial experience, learned the different functions. So I got myself. Number 3 is important because there I'm thinking, go where the action is. You know, and semiconductors used to be, and then I went to software, then internet. So go with the security, go with it where the action is. And that's what you know, I think about, I think about, you know, that, you know, and just, I mean, fortuitously, I mean, technology is where the action is. I mean, as I said, top 5 companies in the world, market cap in the world are all technology companies. Wasn't the case 10 years ago. Yeah, sometimes you do need luck. You know, number 11, you know, people talk about it. I've been talking about this for years and years. And how can you help the people that don't have quite the advantages all of us have is really, really important. You know, I've always felt business, you know, versus some of the folks in the politics that think business is bad. I've always thought business is really a great experience and adventure. Have a balance in life. You may go to the next chart quickly, because I know we're running out of time. Fail to try. It's better to try and fail, so to speak, than not try. So I think that's, this number 19. I can say different ways, but people always ask, what's the number 1 criteria for people who've been successful? Competitiveness is right up there. That's why many folks in sports do really well, and is having that competitive will to win. Really is important. Professional appearance, I think, is important when you think about it. Show up, someone said this when I go to a nonprofit board. I went on I've been on a number of school boards. I was on Menlo Schools board. I was on Cornell University's board. And I asked, when I first joined someone, I asked, what's important? He says, just being, 80% is just being involved and coming to the meetings. I already said 23, a little bit, and have compassion. I learned this: pressure is a privilege. You know, when you say, how do you deal with pressure? You're always in a pressured situation if you're up there in life. So that's, I looked at as a privilege. 26 is obvious given how old I am now. Go where the returns are more asymmetrical in terms of risk reward. Patent recognition is underappreciated, but it's so really important in terms of how you think about everything, and having experiences. That's why you want to stay in the game. I talked about humility and swagger a little bit before. Don't waste talent. I see people sometimes wasting talent, and so yeah, that's In the last chart, which I'm not going to cover here, these are some of the things I just, when my kids first started working, I gave them, so you can look at it later on the last couple of slides is one of the things that I thought about when you first start working. But one I will say that I keep on coming back to is number 8. Now, I know we're running on time. I always say this to people: the only thing that really matters is early on is experience. So don't worry about dollars, don't worry about titles. Really think about it, the experience and working hard, and because you can always get paid. You'll always get paid for experience over time, which is way more meaningful than the dollars or titles that you have. Number 9, I already talked about in terms of career and strategy and ethics. Make a difference. I talked about in one last chart, I guess, is we'll finish off. I think there's one more, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so, this is number 13. I'm going to take a second of all, this is where I think a lot of people forget when they say just give handouts and, guaranteed income and all this stuff. And people want a job. It isn't just a paycheck. And so I think, getting people back to work and not just giving people money is really, it's a dignity of job. And that's what people want. And whether it's your landscaper, whether it's your person, you know, helping around the house, whether it's maybe your kite instructor, you know, whatever it is, you know, the dignity of a job is way more. I mean, obviously you need a paycheck to live, but you know, I think sometimes in politics people forget, you know, it isn't, you know, what people want is a job. They don't want a handout. You know, I think that's true of 99% of people, is the dignity of a job versus getting a paycheck. And I think sometimes we in politics, not we, I'm not in politics, but people in politics forget that item. And that really, it's always, you know, struck by. I actually had a kid, one of my kids once said to me, they looked up to me, even though I've been, you know, older and been doing this, and they looked up to me, they said, geez, you know, it's good to see our father still working. So I think, you know, being out there and working and contributing, and contributing, by the way, could be nonprofit, could be in politics. We need, frankly, more people of smartness going into politics. So it could be nonprofit, could be politics, could be education, could be in healthcare. It could be in business, but you know, being productive, so important.
On that note, I want to just thank you so much for your time and all of your insights. Ken was very inspiring, and I definitely learned a lot. I'm sure a lot of the people on the webinar did today. Just a reminder, again, down in the chat, there's a Zoom room. If people want to join us, Ken can join, I think, for just a little bit to chat with the ACTAI community. And just to remind you that our next Fireside Chat will be this Wednesday, the 13th. We'll have an interview, and actually a slightly different format. We're going to have Jamie Wheel, the executive director of the Flow Genome Project, and co-author of Stealing Fire, interviewing Jesse Richmond, which if you're a kite surfer, many of you know he's an amazing two-time world champion big air kite surfer. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And you can register on the ACTAI.global website under the Fireside Chat area, and hope you can join us. And until our next Fireside Chat, hope you stay home, healthy and inspired. And I'm going to shut off here, and please join us in the Zoom room.